So I'm guessing you're not going to be able to follow along with all the steps. I'm going to go pretty quickly, but we'll post it on the Annenberg DL site, and then you can go back through and actually work through all of these steps in your own time. So the first thing to do is to go to bluehost.com, which we're going to switch over here now, or whichever host you choose. You'll always get sort of a discount for your first year or the first time you set up your site. And then in the future, you'll probably end up renewing that hosting at a higher rate. So you can see here for Bluehost right now, their lowest rate is, wow, $275, which is actually the lowest I've seen it, maybe ever actually, yeah. But then when you renew, it would more likely be more in the $799 range. So you're usually looking around $50 to $80 a year. It's always going to be cheaper if you buy more years at a time, but you do have to buy it all up front. So that's sort of a consideration. So if I go to this get started link, any personal site, and really most things you're doing when you're just getting started off, you don't need anything more than the basic plan. You can see you can upload up to 50 gigabytes of files basically to the site. WordPress itself takes up like 5 megabytes, maybe 10 megabytes. So you have pretty much 50 gigabytes of stuff that you can upload. You can really throw a lot at it without running into any limitations. Typically, hosting accounts also come with a domain. So you can buy your domain as part of this process, or you can buy it separately and then set it up with your hosting account. And I'm going to switch over to the Annenberg DL Bluehost account. If I can find the password for that, just so that we can show you that without having to actually set up an account. So you would just go through the steps. You do have to put in your card information and then make that payment up front. Usually they'll give you a choice of between 1 and 3 years of hosting that you buy right up front, and it'll be usually like $1 cheaper per month if you do an extra year of hosting. So again, you're looking at sort of that maybe $80 to maybe $200 range, and then you get 1 to 3 years of your hosting right up front, and then you don't have to worry about that again in terms of cost until you get back to it. So once you have that set up, I need to copy over this annoying password. Hang on. H. See if that's right. Typically, in my experience, Bluehost has been very reliable, but there are some quirks with it, and really with any host, you'll sort of have that balance. They do have very good support, so if that's something you're looking for, where they can sort of help guide you through if you run into issues, that's one advantage to using Bluehost. And also, before I go further, I do want to mention, so you'll have this hosting layer. Once you get your site set up with WordPress, you don't really ever have to go back to this other than renewing your hosting that you pay for every year, every 3 years, or however often you choose to do it. And they can give you support on WordPress, but the best place to go if you're having trouble with WordPress is Googling how to do things. There's tons of tutorials and resources out there. And also on WordPress.org, they have really good support forums. So if you go to WordPress.org support forums, you can search here, and if you have a question, I would be shocked if no one's ever asked it before. So you can probably find an answer here, or you can ask your own questions here, and it's entirely volunteer-based. There's a huge community of people willing to help out if you have questions. So once you're logged into your Bluehost account, it usually looks something like this, and you'll see an Install WordPress button. Now we're on kind of a weird setup here, so I'm not sure whether or not that's going to work. There are 2 ways to install WordPress from here. You can use this Install WordPress button, or you can do it manually. We'll see if this works, but if not, I'll do the manual way. It takes about 5 minutes. It is kind of technical, but it does give you sort of a cleaner copy of WordPress than if you use their installer. If you use their installer, it's a little bit more geared towards some of the Bluehost things in terms of some of the things that they add on to that. Unfortunately, the internet's also a little bit slow right now. See if that ever loads. If not, I'll just go ahead and do it the other way. So you may remember, yeah, okay, we'll just do it this way. So the manual install, the other place that I should mention to go for help with WordPress stuff is the annenbergdl.org website. We have tons of tutorials on here for Creative Cloud, WordPress, and everything else that we support. And if you go to Tools and then WordPress, you'll see all the WordPress related tutorials there. And I'll point out when it loads exactly where to look for the one on installing WordPress so that you can go into more details there. So I already downloaded WordPress from wordpress.org. I'm not sure where I downloaded it to. I'll just download it again. So the first step is to actually download WordPress. I guess it's probably in downloads. I don't know. And then you need to upload it to your hosting account. You can do that by going to the file manager, and in Bluehost that's available. Oh, it's right there. Yeah. They're typically with hosts, they have a lot of different icons and things that you can click on. You're looking for something called something like File Manager, which is what Bluehost calls it. This is a web-based way to actually look at the files on the server. Once you have WordPress installed, all the images you're uploading, all of that stuff, you'll just do straight through WordPress, and you won't have to actually look at what the files look like sort of in the back end. But to install WordPress in the first place, you'll go in here. This, as I said before, is the Annenberg DL one. So we're going to go in and create a new subfolder for our site. So we'll just call it WP demo. And then I'll open that up. And in here I'm going to upload this WordPress zip file that I downloaded from wordpress.org. And so you'll see it automatically uploads that, and it's complete, so I can go back. And then you're going to unzip that file. So, or in this case, it's called extract in their file manager. Extract files. This part tends to be really quick if you do it with the host's built-in manager. Things that you don't want to do at this stage are definitely don't extract the files on your computer and then upload it, because there are like 4,000 files in there, and it tends to take a really long time to upload that versus just uploading it and then extracting it on the server. This, as you can kind of tell by the way it looks, isn't the most updated interface. So you can see it didn't refresh it automatically, so I had to kind of go back in, but we got there. Once you get here, you did see it's within a WordPress folder, so we don't want our site to be under the WordPress folder. So I'm going to select all these files and move them to the WP demo folder out of the WordPress folder. And if you're just doing this on your own site with your domain, it'll probably all just go in the public HTML folder here, as opposed to within this WP demo folder that I created just for this. And then you can delete that WordPress folder if you want, since it's empty now. Once you've done this, you can also delete that zip file. Everything that you need for using WordPress is here now. So if I go to my domain, which is annenbergdl.org/wpdemo, once the internet loads, we'll see that we now have WordPress, and we can start the process of actually installing it. So we select our language. And then WordPress tells us the information that we need to know to actually finish the installation. What we need to do is we need to set up a database within Bluehost, and then we'll connect WordPress to that database. That's sort of the last technical step, and once that's done, we have WordPress, and we never really need to worry about Bluehost again. So I'm going to go back to the cPanel, and I'm going to go to Databases. And again, the internet. Some of these different links in the Bluehost thing will recheck that you're logged in fairly persistently and log you out. So unfortunately, it looks like I need to retype this password again. Web.com. While I'm doing this, does anyone have questions so far? Yeah?
So, is it easy to like transfer your domain?
Great question. Kind of. So if you set it up with the self-hosted like this, all your files now are on Bluehost. Can you do this for me, Erica? So all your files are on sort of this server now, and the server is kind of independent of the actual domain. So you can add additional domains to your Bluehost account. And so if you change your mind on what your domain is and you want to add a new one and then move the site to it, you can do that. And there is documentation on WordPress.org, and I think also on our site that shows, thanks. Yeah. Okay. That shows how to do that. Okay. So I'm going to jump back into the right thing and databases. Again, this is probably going to be a little bit simpler looking for most of you because we have kind of a weird Bluehost account here, and if this logs out again, I'm going to be kind of annoyed. Okay, we're good. So you're going to create a new database. So I'm going to call it WP demo in this case. Create database. You have to do two things, and again, if you get lost in this process, you can always go back to that page on your site where WordPress is telling you the information you need. So you need the database name, username, and password. So if I find where I was doing that. So it added the database, so that's the database name. And then we need to add a new user to that. Again, it can just be the same thing as what the database name was. And always generate a password for this. You're not going to need to use this password ever again, like literally ever again. You're going to use something totally different to actually log into your site. So let it generate a secure password, and then you can go ahead and go to the next step in WordPress. Paste that password straight in here. Oops. And then again, you won't ever need to worry about this. So then you can check that box, use password, create the user. And while that's creating, we'll go ahead and put in that username. There's one more step with Bluehost that gets a little bit confusing, and that's that you actually have to add the user that you created to this specific database that you created. So you go back, and then that's add user to database. WP demo is the user, and that's also what we call the database. You click add, you give it all privileges, make changes, and once this loads, I copied in the database name and the username. I copied in the password. The database host with Bluehost is always going to be localhost, and the table prefix you should just leave as WP underscore. So now that we've done all of that, we should be able to hit submit, and it should work. And it worked. So now we don't ever really need to touch Bluehost again. We're in WordPress. We can run the install. And now we're going to actually set up our username and password that we'll use to log in to manage our site. So for this workshop today, we're sort of looking at a portfolio site, so sort of a personal site. Most of what I'm going to talk about will apply regardless of the type of site you're making, but I'll just sort of go under that assumption. So I'll make the site title my name. Your username here, this is a set of, like, the usernames for your site are specific to your site. So it can be anything you want. It's not like you're going to have like there's an existing user with your name. So usually I recommend just using your first name. Don't use an email here because this will show up in URLs sometimes. This password generally, while it's more secure to use something like this, you do want to be able to remember it or use a password manager. For now, I'll just copy this one here. And then you need to put in your email. And sometimes WordPress will send you emails if you get a comment or things like that, if WordPress updates. And then you can click Install WordPress. And that is now complete, so you can actually log in and manage your site. And notice you're at now, so my site I'm setting up is at annenbergdl.org/WP-demo. So that'll be the URL for your site, and this page will be the page you want to bookmark for actually logging in to manage your site. So the Bluehost stuff, it's kind of over there, but you can mostly forget about it. This is where you'll actually go in to do everything you want to do on your site. So you can put in the username and password that you set, log in, and now we're into WordPress. So I'm going to pause for a minute here. Any questions about installing WordPress, getting set up with hosting? Awesome. Okay. So now that we have our site, we can actually start building it out, adding our content, stuff like that. So I'll just say there are a few different approaches you could go to actually taking those first steps. This screen up at the top of the dashboard has some sort of suggestions for ways that you can get started. You might want to start by customizing your site, sort of more the look and feel aspects of it. You might want to start by focusing more on actually building out your content. Or you might want to start by looking at sort of some of the different settings. This is using the latest version of WordPress that's out right now, which is WordPress 4.6. In this version of WordPress, my recommendation is to start with settings, then add some content, and then customize your site. In future versions of WordPress, there are going to be some changes that make it a lot easier to start sort of with customization without having to go through some of the other steps first. So just sort of play around with it, see what seems like it's making sense. If you run into something that's getting confusing or not making sense, maybe try going through one of those other paths. For now, though, I'm going to start in settings and just make sure I get everything else filled out that I want to fill out here. This tagline, for now, I'm going to leave. That we can change when we customize our site later. Your time zone. Again, stuff like this isn't particularly important, but it will affect what's shown as the date for your posts and stuff. So it's good to put that in if you can find it. Unfortunately, there are a lot of things in here, but that'll work. Date and time format are usually good defaults for the US. For some reason, it defaults to the week starting on Monday. Save your changes, and then you can kind of go through each of these screens. With these, you'll set it once, and then again, probably not come back to touch these settings very frequently at all. So right now, I don't really want to change anything in writing or the reading settings. Discussion settings, this is comments. By default, comments are on for all posts and all pages on your site. And usually that's not what you want, especially for pages. And so unless you're really sure that you want to have comments turned on for all of your content where anyone can go in and leave comments, my recommendation would be to start by turning comments off. And then once you're ready to enable that functionality, once you sort of built up, if you have maybe a blog and you want to build up your audience and have more of that interaction with your readers, then you can go in and actually turn comments on for posts, but keep it off of your pages. For most portfolio sites and just getting started, I definitely suggest just turning it off because it's easier to turn it off everywhere here at the beginning than going back and turning it off on every individual post. So that is, let's see where it is. This one check mark here, allow people to post comments on new articles. If you uncheck that, none of the other many options on this screen matter at all because people won't be leaving comments at all. Theoretically, this also keeps you from getting spam comments, which unfortunately tend to come in a lot on WordPress sites. So save changes there. You won't have comments showing up anywhere. And then these last couple, the defaults work. You can change them if you want. For media and for permalinks, I'm not a Mac person, so I keep. Okay. By default, you can see the link structure is day and name, so that means your individual posts will have the date that they were posted in the URL. If you want it to just have like the post name, you can just switch it to post name, and you'll get that. And then save changes. And that's it on settings. So once you've set that up, the next thing to worry about is your content. I've been told by some helpful advisors who are Annenberg students that most things that most of you might want to put as static pages would be like an about page, a contact page. I think that was it, right? Yeah, so about page, contact page, and then the rest of the site will be primarily your portfolio. And so to do that, we'll go into pages. There is a sample page that you can go in and edit. If you know what you want your pages to be, I just trash that and then add new pages. So we'll start with an about page. This is what the post and page editor looks like in WordPress. So might take a little bit of getting used to it first, but once you're familiar with this, all of your content will be entered from something that looks like this. So you can put in your page title, and then the content. I'm just going to copy a bio that I have written on my actual site. For now, you can write it right here in WordPress if you want. You probably already have something written somewhere, but if not, it is actually really good to write in WordPress as opposed to writing your content in something like Word and then copying it over, because WordPress gets you all of the formatting exactly how it's optimized for the web as you create your content in this editor. And it'll also automatically save all your changes as you go, both on your computer and syncing up to the site. So you're actually much less likely to lose your content as you're writing if like your computer dies or the internet crashes or whatever. WordPress does a really good job of keeping it safe, and actually, with that respect, is a lot safer than using something like Word directly on your computer. This content I actually wrote in WordPress, so when I copy it from the front end of this site, it'll probably copy in pretty cleanly. When you copy stuff from Word, you might get weird formatting sometimes, and there are some different tools in this editor that'll help you do that. Specifically, this button to clear formatting. If when you paste something in, it looks weird and like not right, select everything, clear the formatting, and then start over within WordPress, and that'll make it all nicely work with web standards. Important things to note, my bio is pretty short, but if you have a certain amount of content, you might want to add headings. On the web, headings are a really important way to separate out different sections of content on pages. And they'll increase your search engine optimization stuff. For portfolio sites, search engine optimization is good for making sure you come up if someone Googles your name. You may also want to be optimizing for other terms if you have a very, I guess, unique perspective, or if there are very specific things that you do that you want to target search results on Google for your site coming up. Again, though, for portfolio sites, most of you probably won't need to worry too much about that. And I'll show you some more features of the editor in a minute, but for now I just want to get this first page published. So the page is up, you publish it, it's live on the site, and you're good to go. I'll add one more page right now, which will be a contact page. There are a few different ways to do a contact page. You can do a contact form where someone has sort of fields for their name and email and then the message, and then it'll send you an email automatically. Or you can just, type out your email or your phone number or whatever else you want people to have for ways to contact you directly on the page, and then leave it up to them to do that. To do the contact form thing, you will use a plugin. And I'll talk a little bit more, actually I'll talk a bit more about that right now. So we're going to go to plugins here, add new, and I'll just do a brief overview. Plugins will add functionality on top of what the base WordPress experience has. So something like a contact form, there isn't a contact form built into WordPress out of the box, but if I search for contact form here, you'll see that there are hundreds of plugins that do contact forms, thousands of plugins that do contact forms. There, I think, are tutorials on our site and just generally on the web if you Google how to find the right WordPress plugin or something that talk about things to look for. So I won't go into too much detail, but you can see the ratings here. You can see how many sites are using a given plugin. And those are just some initial ways to sort of gauge which of these thousands of plugins is the one that's actually going to work best for what you need. The other thing that I like to do is, if you do look at the details, if you look at the screenshots, you can see right away whether it's something that's close to what you're looking for or not. So this one, it looks like it's geared a little bit more towards, that's an RSVP form. This is a more simple contact form. This is the form maker within WordPress, I think. So what I'm gathering from looking at this, it's a very complicated plugin. It does a lot of different things, probably more than what you would need for just a contact form for your site. So again, you can kind of look through some of the different plugins. You don't need to look through 2,000. You'll probably find something within the first few that works. For now, though, I'm just going to put in an email. So this is when you're just first getting set up. You can do something like this for your contact page and then go back and do the contact form later. Either way works. I think a lot of people on the web, sort of contact forms have become more of a norm. Part of the reason is that if you do put your email on there directly, there is potential for that to get picked up by spam bots, which scan the web for email addresses like this just to send spam. So that's something to think about, but again, when you're first getting started, don't worry too much about it. So those are pages, and we have a few different things here. We've got posts, pages, and media. Pages are things that you might update occasionally, but they're always going to be there. So you're always going to have your contact page accessible. You're always going to have a link to your about page. Whereas posts are a little bit more time sensitive and might be more likely to change over time. So while you probably would add posts somewhat regularly, once you have these couple set up, you're unlikely to be adding a lot of pages in the future. Depends on the type of site you have, though. Posts can be used for a few different things. In the example I'm going through today, I'm going to use posts for my portfolio. So each item in the portfolio is going to have its own post. You can also use posts like blog posts, and that's sort of how WordPress was originally designed, where posts are sort of your blog, whereas pages are then the static content that doesn't change, and the blog is the current things, and then it's all got a timestamp on it. If you want to have both a tutorial and a blog, you can do that, you can do that with them both being posts and using categories. But usually what I would recommend if you want to do both is to set up a custom post type. I'm not going to go into too much detail on that, but essentially I do kind of want to just show you an example, though. I'll just pull it up on my computer and turn it around for you guys to see. You can have custom post types for pretty much anything. So on my site, I publish, well, I have a bunch of different sites. One of my sites, I publish sheet music. And so this is probably really small for most of you. I have this little sheet music option under posts. And so in addition to having posts and pages, I have this optimized interface that lets me post sheet music with recordings and things like that. On the Annenberg DL website, we have a separate post type for all of our tutorials. And then we have our news posts separate from that as regular posts. So you can add custom post types. That's, again, going to be done with plugins. And that will allow you to have both a blog and a portfolio without having to stick both of them into posts. So for now, I'm just going to use posts for my portfolio, but keep that in mind as you're thinking about what type of content you want to have on your site. You can totally have a blog and a portfolio. Make sure you plan ahead, though, that you'll use probably posts for your blog and you'll add a plugin to use for the portfolio. If you do want a portfolio plugin, I'm guessing that there are several plugins that have that specific functionality. There's also a plugin called Jetpack that has a whole bunch of features built into it. Things like stats, infinite scroll on your site, depending on the theme, things like that. And one of the features in there is a portfolio post type. Yes? Yes, I'll show you really quick what that looks like. Here. So if we go to plugins, add new, this is actually one of the featured plugins. So Jetpack by WordPress.com. It has a lot of different stuff in it, and it takes a little bit of time to set up because you have to connect it to an account on WordPress.com. So again, this can be a little bit confusing because, well, this is WordPress.com, but we're using WordPress.org. This builds on some of the infrastructure that WordPress.com has and brings some of those features to your self-hosted site. It does mean that you have to have an account with WordPress.com, which is run by a for-profit company called Automatic. Automatic does not control WordPress. They do control WordPress.com. So it can get a little bit confusing, but sort of the short of it is, to use this plugin, you do have to set up an account with them. And then once you do that, they have a whole bunch of different features that you can use. So statistics are built in. You can also, with another plugin, set up something like Google Analytics with your site, if you want more, control over yourself versus using WordPress.com. Bunch of related posts, stuff like that. So you can see on here, they have a lot of different features. This screenshot shows a few of them right there. One of their features is custom post types, and one of the ones that they have is a portfolio. So that's an easy way if you want a lot of the functionality that you could get from a bunch of different plugins in one plugin. This would be a good plugin to check out for that. But as I said, you do need an account, so I can't quickly show you that now. I think we do have a tutorial on our site already that shows that. And by the way, I mentioned it earlier, I don't think I actually showed it. This is our WordPress page on annenbergdl.org. We've got a lot of different tutorials on here, and I'm going to cover a lot of the different stuff that's in here today. But definitely check this out for more details on these different things, including this installing WordPress manually, which was that somewhat more technical process that I went through a few minutes ago to go from my Bluehost account to having WordPress set up. Right there, that's pretty outdated. That was like 2 years ago. But there is, I think the video was actually 2.5 years ago, but there is something on there that you can check out. And there's also a lot of helpful information. Just Googling, Jetpack WordPress plugin. Should I use Jetpack for WordPress, or why, things like that. Okay, so back to here. There's also a sample post built in. I usually will just trash it if I'm starting by building my content. It's useful to have that there if you do start by customizing your site so you can see what it looks like. And then we'll start adding some content. So I'm using posts in this example site for my portfolio. And my particular portfolio is going to have some seemingly random stuff on it because I do a lot of random different things, but that's okay. So depends on the type of content you have, how you want to present it here. Most of mine have images, but not all of them. And when you have an image, you'll use this option at the bottom for featured image. And for most themes, that will display in some sort of a creative, nice way that is better than just putting your image into the content area here. So if I go to set featured image, I can drag and drop files in. So I'm actually going to drop, we'll just do one at a time. So we'll start with this one. So once this uploads, I can then put in the title and then a brief description. So this is a concrete canoe, which is a thing. They do float. The SC3. And then if I wanted to put a brief description in here, I can just say, USC's 2014 concrete canoe that I helped design and build or something. So what will take the longest with setting up your portfolio is actually having your content ready and putting your content in. So if you've already built out some other form of a portfolio and you're putting it online, you'll be able to copy a lot of that stuff, work that you've already done, and put it into WordPress. If you're building it out from scratch, it'll take a little bit longer to actually think about what type of content you're going to put up there and how you're going to present it. But for the most part, you always will want to have a title associated with an image if you're posting something like an image. And if possible, it's really good to have a description and, preferably more thorough than just a sentence. The other thing that is good to do, this depends on your theme, and we'll get into themes in a minute, but most themes support what are called post formats. You can see on the right there some of the different formats that are available for this theme. So since this is primarily image-based content, I'm going to use the image format for this. A few other options before I publish it. You can see there are categories and tags. Categories are kind of like pages in that the idea is that you won't necessarily be adding new categories over time. You'll set up a bunch of categories at the beginning, and then most of your posts will fit into those categories as you post new items in your portfolio. Tags, on the other hand, are going to generally have fewer items associated with a given tag than you would with a category. And you may have a tag that you use, like, for example, like work that you did at USC could maybe be a tag where then you have, I can't think of a good example off the top of my head, but if USC is a tag, then, well, eventually you're going to stop posting stuff in USC, but it'll all be grouped together. And the stuff that you did at USC could fit into multiple different categories, maybe based on the type of content you were producing or the subject matter of it. So in this example, I'm going to do concrete is going to be a category, and concrete canoe is going to be a tag, and probably also USC. Completely arbitrary. This is sort of its own workshop in itself, talking about how to organize your site. So play around with it, try stuff. It doesn't have to be perfect. The goal is to get something out there, and then you can always go back and adjust it later. So think a little bit about it, but don't worry too much. Publish it. Your first post is done. I'm going to add in a few more quickly here, just so that we can visualize it. So another thing that I'm going to put in here is one of my compositions. I did a minor in music composition when I was an undergrad here. So my portfolio is going to have some audio. You can upload an MP3 file right into WordPress, embed it with an embedded media player. You'll see it actually pulled in a bunch of the metadata from that MP3 file already, so I don't have to do that manually. I'll put that in, and then, I just put that in this existing post. So rather than doing that, I'm going to add a new post. Don't need to save the changes here. And then it's already in my media library since I already uploaded it, so then I can insert it here. You can see it inserts an audio player right here. You can play it, make sure you, okay. You can play it, make sure it works. Select the audio post format in this case. And then again, give your post a title. So, Woodwind Quintet. Categories, I'll add a music category. Not music category, just music. And then I'll tag this compositions. Again, completely arbitrary. I could have made a compositions category if I knew I was going to be posting basically like all the music I was posting was going to be like my own compositions, but maybe not in this case. And for this one, maybe there isn't a featured image that makes sense as much. Depending on how visual you want your site to be or what your theme does, it may be better to actually put a featured image with every post, even if there's not something that fits it perfectly. So I'm just going to throw one in here just for the purposes of demonstration. Personally, I probably wouldn't include a featured image with an audio post, but it kind of depends on exactly what you're posting and whether there's some visual content that relates to it. Again, you can also add in a description with the audio here. I'll skip that for time now. Let's add another item. Any types of content that you guys, off the top of your head, anything else you want me to show for adding a certain type of content? Yeah, I think for most of you it'll be a lot of images, a lot of text. You can put in, if you have an article that you publish somewhere, for example, you can put in the article here in WordPress on your site. I do want to show you how to do things like embedding a YouTube video. So I'm just going to go to some random YouTube video here. If you have a YouTube video, all you have to do is take the URL, copy it. I didn't go to the embed code or anything. I just copied the URL of the video, paste it, hit enter, and looks a little weird, but it embeds it automatically.
I don't think I'm.
And then you can play it right in there and see that it works. So, all you have to do to embed YouTube, Vimeo, tweets, you just need to get the URL of the specific tweet, which you can get from clicking on the date of the tweet. So anything like that, you can copy the URL, paste it in on its own line, and it'll automatically embed. You can even do this for arbitrary pages on the web. If it's a site that's running WordPress, you can actually copy. In fact, I'll show you on the DL. So if I'm looking at this tutorial on the DL site, if it ever loads, I can actually, oh, nope, that's not what I wanted. Here we go. Theoretically, you can copy this URL, paste it on its own line, and it will actually embed the featured image, the post title, the excerpt of the post. It'll show you what site it came from, show the icon for that site. So that can also be kind of a handy thing, and you can also do this for pages within your own site. About 25% of the internet is running WordPress, and so if you if you go to a particular site, there's a good chance that you'll be able to do this. Try it, and it might work. And again, you can do this with your own site. So I'll also show you in a minute how to change that icon. Now I think we have 5 minutes left in the hour. I'm going to go a little bit over since we started late. But if you do need to leave, that's fine. So that's sort of embedding content. We have a dedicated post for that on our site. I'll just call this embeds for now, and also throw one more featured image in here just so we have a little bit more to look at once we start customizing the site. So by setting up your content before you pick a theme and actually customize it, you'll have a little bit better idea of what it's actually going to look like when you try a different theme. Whereas if you go in and pick a theme and then add your content, it might be a little bit harder to actually pick a theme because you won't know how your content's going to look within it. It's, you can argue it either way. For now though, I think usually it's good to put a couple of posts in, and then then you go through the customization process, picking a theme, which I'll show you now. And then once you've done that, you can go back and add more content and really fully flesh it out. But sort of getting to that initial, I have a portfolio, it's something that I'm ready to share with people, and then I can continue adding content later. So now that we've done all of this, I'm going to click up on my name here to visit the site and see what it looks like now. So you can see it's showing the posts that we put here on the homepage of the site. So all those featured images, and then the different content that I put in there. It also has some stuff over on the right side there that, in my case, I don't want all that. So I'm going to take some of that out. And the header of the site's kind of boring. So we'll go into customize now. So this button shows up once you go to the front end of the site. And we can do a bunch of different things to customize this and really make it look how we want it. So the first thing I'm going to point out is static front page. It's at the bottom within the customizer. It defaults to showing your latest posts. If it's a portfolio site and you have posts and a portfolio, and you want to show your portfolio on the home page, there isn't an easy way to do that built in. So we actually, as the Digital Lounge, released a WordPress plugin that lets you do that. And so you can search for that and find it, and that'll add an option to use your own custom post type on the front page. The other option is to use a static page for the front page. So if you wanted to start with your about page and then have a link to view your portfolio or your blog, You can set the front page to about, and then the posts page you would make sort of a placeholder page for that. The posts page doesn't actually show the content of the page, it just shows that page title. So now you can see the front page is showing this about page. In my case though, I want it to show the latest posts. You can do things like changing colors from here. So this particular theme has a bunch of different color scheme options. The other really important one is site identity. So now, before I had mentioned, we'll get back to this tagline. Put a tagline here. Don't just delete just another WordPress site. Definitely get rid of just another WordPress site. If you Google just another WordPress site, there are millions of results because millions of sites didn't bother getting rid of it. And this actually shows up in the browser in the page title here. So you may not be able to see that from there. It says customize Nick Halsey, just another WordPress site. If someone bookmarks the homepage of your site and you haven't changed this, it'll say just another WordPress site there. So change your tagline, put something interesting in there. So this is not interesting. I don't know. Make sure you spell it right. You can put that in there. You can also put in a logo. So I will, again, struggle with using a Mac and put in a logo. You do need to customize the logo for each theme. So, and that's because the cropping of it may be different depending on the theme. So in this one, I'm going to crop out some of the white space here. And then we'll see that that shows up over there. And the other really important one is the site icon. This is different from the logo. The logo is only available in certain themes. The icon is available in all themes. I am going to use the same image for it in my case. Oops. But you can see this icon is what's used up here in the browser. It's also used on mobile if you pin a site like to your lock screen or your home screen on an iPhone or iPad or something. So it's really important to set that because, as you can see, all these sites here have icons right there, and it's a really good way to make sure you have your digital identity reflected in all aspects of your site. So that's the site identity. You can put in a header image, background image. A lot of this will be specific to the particular theme you choose. So I'll wait until we try a different theme. The other important one is the menu. So you can see right now there's no link anywhere to the About page and the Contact page. You'll use a menu for that. So I'm going to go in to add a menu. I'm going to just call it main. That doesn't show up anywhere. Add items, and then I can go into pages and I can add home, contact, about right there. You can also add posts if you want to link to a specific post in your menu, or more likely you might want to link to one of your categories or all of your categories. So you could add a couple of different categories in there too. You can do the same thing with tags or even different post formats. So if I put a link to the images here, maybe I don't want to call it image though, so maybe I'll go in and change the label to say images, and then you'll see this isn't showing up on the site, right? You just need to check this box down here under menu locations that says primary menu. The exact wording of it will depend on the theme. So in this theme, it's called the primary menu. And then once this reloads, which looks like the internet had a brief hiccup, you can see that that now shows up right here. You saw before it was hidden behind that menu button because my screen was a little smaller. There are some icons down at the bottom here that actually let you preview what your site will look like on a phone. So it's really important when you're trying out different themes to make sure that you like the way it's displaying on different size devices, and these buttons down here make it easy to do that. If your screen, if for whatever reason it's triggering something that looks like more of a mobile view on your screen just by default, you can use this button down here to collapse the menu to see if on a slightly bigger screen it'll change. So that's the main menu. You can see this theme also has a social links menu. That can be a little bit confusing to set up, so I'll show you briefly how that works. So I'll just call that a social menu. Again, this is specific to different themes, but a lot of themes now will do it this way. To add links to the social menu, you're going to go to custom links here. And then you can put in the URL for your Twitter or pretty much anything else that's social media. I'm just going to put in literally a link to Twitter and say Instagram. For now. And then I'll put that in the social links menu. Most themes that support this will automatically show icons for this. You can see this one shows it at the bottom, and right down there I now have an icon for my link to Twitter and Instagram. Ideally you would link to your Twitter and your Instagram. So once we've got that, we have sort of the basic stuff. Oh, one other thing on here, this stuff on the side. Let's get rid of that, or at least get rid of the ones we don't want. That's in widgets. Again, different themes will have different options for where there are widgets. This theme has all the widgets in the sidebar. So I can go into the sidebar and see what's in there by default. And then, I guess the search one kind of makes sense. Recent posts makes sense. I turned comments off. So I'm going to remove the recent comments widget just by opening it up there and then pulling it down. Archives will show just posts by month linked, which I don't really want right now because I don't have that much content. And categories, I put some of my categories in the menu, so maybe I'll get rid of that, but maybe I'll show my tags here. And then this meta one you usually won't want. The only really useful thing here is the link to the site admin. But again, that's something you should bookmark when you first set up your site. So when you get to that login screen, bookmark it then, or you can even, I'll show you in a minute, but if you bookmark the dashboard, that'll automatically take you to the login screen and then take you to the dashboard if you bookmark that instead of the actual login screen. So either way will work. So I'll remove that meta widget and then maybe add this tag cloud widget so I can show my tags. The other widget that's really useful that's built in, unfortunately there isn't like an image widget or a media widget built into Core, so you'll install a plugin if you want to put like a picture of yourself there or something, which might be nice to do on a portfolio site. But there is this text widget which you can actually use for a lot of different things. So if you wanted to put like contact information, widgets usually are on every page of the site. So if you wanted to have like contact information on every page or something like that, I don't know, you could put that in with a text widget without having to find like a contact widget or something. Unless you want a contact form widget, and there are plugins for that. So I'm going to go ahead and save and publish these changes. And then the last thing that I'm just going to show you is themes. So we have something that works. It may not look just like what you want though. I mean, we kind of cleaned up the content, but the layout's maybe not what you were looking for, right? You can click this change. Oh, that's exciting. You can click that change theme button. It looks like that didn't work here. What I was going to say though is that clicking that button there will only show themes already installed on your site as of right now. So to install new themes, we actually have to go back out of the customizer and into the dashboard. This is the dashboard that I was talking about before, where this is a good thing to bookmark if you don't bookmark the actual login screen. And then that will help you remember where to go to actually log in to manage your site. So I'm going to click this link here to change my theme completely. And you can see there are only 3 themes installed right now. These are all the default themes. So I'm going to add a new theme. One of the things that I see a lot is wanting to have more of like a grid view for your portfolio items instead of sort of the list, sort of more blog-like list of posts. So once you go into install themes, you can see there are some featured themes. These change daily and are featured at random. So they may not really look that great, but they're here. You can kind of browse through them. Two of the handy ways, you can look at popular themes. Popular does not necessarily mean good. So just keep that in mind. People do a lot of different things with WordPress, and so just because it's popular doesn't mean it's going to be right for what you want to do. And it also doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to be easy to use. In fact, some of the popular themes that aren't default themes tend to be among the most complicated themes. With complexity comes a lot of features, but it also makes them really hard to use and hard to set up. So I always recommend starting simple, and then as you build out your site more, if you want to go with a more complex theme, you have that option. But here are a bunch of the featured themes here. Another handy way to do it is this feature filter. So let's say we want a grid layout for this, and then we want a portfolio theme. And there are also all these other different features here. And so let's say you have a lot of different types of content, maybe some audio, text content, as well as imagery, stuff like that. So we want to have that post formats functionality I was showing you earlier. You can apply these filters and then see how many themes come up. So there were, I think, 4,000 total themes available here, but only 27 fit these criteria, so that can quickly narrow down the different themes that you're looking at. Unfortunately, I'm not liking a lot of these just looking at them, but I see a few here that I've used before actually that I would recommend. This one here, as well as that one and this one, are all by the same author. His themes are really good. You can't search with this search box by theme author, unfortunately. So if there's a particular, and this one here is also by that same author and also pretty good. And actually, I'll go ahead and open the preview of that up. So there's an author up there. You can't search by the author. Again, though, on our site somewhere, and I don't remember where, so I'm going to search for WordPress themes. We have a list of some recommended theme authors, and then you can actually look at their websites, and they've got all of their free WordPress.org themes as well as commercial themes that are sold elsewhere. Here we go, recommended WordPress themes. So this is the author of that theme I was just showing you. We have a few other ones listed here. So you can actually go to his site, for example, look at his demos. He has, he redesigned this. So this is the one I was just looking at, actually. He has a much more detailed description of what this theme is designed for, as well as a live demo where you can actually go in and play with it. So if you don't have that much content yet, doing something like this would be a good way to actually see how the theme feels once there's more content in there and with some more different things that could be built out over time. So you can see this little preview here is not with our content. This is just arbitrary content on WordPress.org, and none of it has images associated with it, so it's kind of plain to look at. I'll go ahead and install it though, and then once it installs, I'm going to close out of here, and then we're going to live preview it. You always want to live preview instead of like activating it right away so that you can see what it actually looks like. And now we can see it with our different content here. So I think, so probably the main thing you would want to change with this theme is that background image. You probably don't want to stick with the default image. In this case, it's using the header image feature. So I can use one of the ones I already have, or throw, oops, again, I do not use a Mac. Or you can throw something else in there if you want. I also work at USC Village, by the way, so that's why I have this image, and that is also USC Village. That is one of the courtyards. So I can throw this in, crop it. We'll just go with that. The internet seems to have slowed down again. Okay, we will adjust that a little bit. Crop it, and then because we're live previewing it, you can see right away what it looks like with that. So that's much closer to the vibe I want here, I guess. It looks like my menu isn't really here. I've got a couple of the links. So I'll go into menus. And since I already have my two menus, I can just skip to menu locations and set the main menu and the social menu with this new theme. And now looks like that's in up here. And then the social menu shows up there. So some of these options, once you decide on a theme or as you're trying different themes, you will need to reset them for every new theme that you try. But you can see I still have my static, or my front page is still showing my latest post instead of the page. And you can even click around within this preview. So if I want to see what the about page looks like within the preview, I can do that without having to actually publish this. So again, it looks like this green color can be customized. The exact options that show up will depend on the specific theme that you're using. So not every theme will let you change all the colors. Not every theme will have like a header image or a background image. And that's just some of the stuff to look for as you're picking a theme. So in my case, I like how this looks, so I'll go ahead and click Save and Activate and close this, and then go back to actually looking at my site. And now you can see that's published at my URL for everyone to see. So that's about all I wanted to cover for now. Any questions about anything I talked about today? Yes?
What image size would you recommend us to upload to the app?
Great question. When you upload images to WordPress, WordPress will automatically take your image and make a whole bunch of different copies of it at different sizes. And then those get optimized for the particular view. So I actually recommend uploading your full-size image within reason. I mean, if your images are more than 10 megabytes and you're doing like really, really high quality images, maybe not, but otherwise, upload the full size. And then when you're actually putting it in, WordPress in most cases will pick the right size automatically. It's even optimized where, like on a phone, it'll load a smaller size of the image than on a laptop. I will show you though, when you are putting images within your content, so if I go to add media here to do that and I select one of these ones I already have, there's a size option here. And so never use the full size image within the post content, because in that case, it's actually putting it in there. It's not letting WordPress automatically decide. Large is usually set up as the width of the content area. So if you put in the large size, that'll usually work. And then you can resize that down. I didn't show this earlier, but you can resize how big it's actually showing up as within WordPress, as well as using these buttons to float text around images and stuff like that. Thanks. Do you have a question?
You showed us the instructions
Mhm.
on the rollout and how to set up a Bluehost account.
Yes.
The manual version is the non-manual version that you just showed us today available?
Yeah, I actually showed you the manual thing today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so somewhere I think, I went to it in this tab, so if I go back to here, actually, and a couple more, somewhere here. I'll just click on, if you click on a WordPress logo on our site, it will take you to all the WordPress tutorials. So installing WordPress manually, that's what I did I kind of skipped over actually, paying for the Bluehost account and that step. So basically go to bluehost.com, do just the most basic plan they have. If you can afford right now to go ahead and buy 3 years of it, maybe around, actually right now it's a really good deal. So it's probably only going to be like $150 or $200 now, and then you won't have to deal with it for a couple years, or pay a little bit more per month now and just do a year. Put that in, you get into Bluehost, and it looks like this, and then this tutorial walks you through everything from that step to actually where I had WordPress and was adding content and stuff. So you can go here for that, for the details, and this walks through step by step. Yeah. Great question. So right now the answer is yes, but with a plugin, and there are hundreds and hundreds of plugins for it. If you wait until December 7th or something, the new version of WordPress 4.7, is coming out in December and has that functionality built in. And it's actually really nice because it's in the customizer that I was showing you, where you have sort of the preview of your site as you're doing it. And so again, there are plugins that you can use in the meantime, and then it'll be right at the bottom here, a new option called CSS. You'll be able to put CSS in here and then see what happens over there, and it'll override whatever the theme is doing. I should also mention, you can create custom themes when you have a self-hosted WordPress site. So if you have gotten more into the HTML and CSS side and you know how to do that, you can build your own theme from scratch. You can do a child theme, which basically takes an existing theme like this one and makes changes that maybe you almost could do just with CSS, but you also want to change some of the actual HTML that the theme is generating and stuff like that. Or you can do an entirely custom theme where you build the whole thing out yourself. WordPress themes are built in PHP, which essentially is a dynamic version of HTML. So PHP generates the HTML, and then CSS styles it. So if you want to get into that side, you totally can, and that's where WordPress can really scale to literally anything you want to throw at it, it can handle. But again, just getting started, there's absolutely no need to do that. So, but yes, is the answer. Yeah.
I realize there are some lattice color combinations of each theme. Can we change that combination, or it's
Like the colors that a theme is in? So it'll depend on the theme. So this theme has this one color option here, which is only shown in some places, and it isn't actually previewing it right now, but I think it's this green color. So this theme, not really. Let's try this again. If I go to the 2015 theme, you'll see that it has much more. So it has, if it ever loads, the internet. Okay. So it has sort of these like defaults, which don't give you a whole lot, but you can also customize these specific colors to be sort of the exact color that you want. And if you have sort of your digital brand colors with your logo and stuff, you can put those in as well. So depends on the theme, or you can do it with CSS. So did I see a question?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna ask, like, if you were thinking of maybe putting like your resume on here, would you maybe do that as a file, or would you type it out into?
Great question. Yeah, you can do it either way. It kind of depends on how you have your resume formatted and how much you're emphasizing that part of your site. So you could make a dedicated page for your resume where you type it out there. You could make a resume heading under your bio on your about page and put it there, or you could just link to it from your about page and upload it. You can upload PDFs to WordPress. So whatever you want. Yeah, it's sort of up to you. Personally, I would probably link it, upload it, but it really depends on what you're doing. Yeah. I pretty much always recommend using WordPress.org self-hosted, even if you want to do a very basic site and you don't think you're going to be doing too much to it over time, just because you really do have the ability to do anything you want with it. Once you live with it for a little while, you start to realize with WordPress.com that you're a lot more restricted in what you can do. So there are sort of two levels of restrictions. There are things that you simply can't do, so you can't ever have your own custom theme on WordPress.com, or even go beyond the roughly 300 themes that they have available. You can do things like CSS, but you have to pay to use CSS on WordPress.com. You have to pay to even use custom colors for your theme on WordPress.com. So based on those trade-offs, I usually find that it's actually better to just sort of bite the bullet up front, pay for hosting, get your self-hosted WordPress.org with your domain and everything, and then you don't have to sort of make that decision every time you want to add a feature or change a color of whether it's worth paying for it or just having it. You can really just be free to add. I want to add a contact form. I can add a plugin and do that. WordPress.com does have a contact form already built in, and you don't have to pay for it, but it's sort of that trade-off. They also have a lot of things that you probably will never use, and because it's sort of that thing where you can't add your own functionality, you'll have to work through all that extra, all the extra buttons that are there and all that stuff. Makes it a little harder to use sometimes. Yeah.
So I want to ask, like, the exact link of today's presentation would be on
Yeah, it'll be, so we'll post this on annenbergdl.org, and you can search for it. You can go to the WordPress tool for it, or if you go down, we have a web design band here, so it'll be in here as well. Yeah. Anything else? Cool. Thank you for coming. Yeah. I do want to also point out I am here usually Thursday afternoons. I may not always be at the help desk, but you can ask them and I'll be around. And so if you have any other questions about WordPress, please feel free to come in and I would be happy to help you. Thanks.